Let's go.
We have challah. Um, Dough for dogs. If shepherds eat of it, it's liable to challah, and it may serve for erev, and it may serve for an erev, and it may serve for shituf, and for one recites the blessing over it, and one recites the zimun over it. It may be made on a festival when one fulfills one's duty with it on Pesach. If shepherds do not eat of it, it's not liable to challah, and it may not serve for erev, and it may not serve for shituf. One does not recite the blessing over it, and one does not recite the Zeman over it, and it may not be made on a festival, and one does not fulfill one's duty with it on Pesach. In either case, it is susceptible to food uncleanliness. Challah and Truma may carry the penalties of death, and the additional fifth are forbidden to non-priests. Are property of the priest and are neutralized in 101. Require the washing of hands and sunset, and may not be separated from the clean for the unclean, and only that which is nearby and from finished products. If one says, let all my threshing floor be truma and all my challah, he has said nothing unless he leaves part of it over. A product from outside the land which entered the land is liable to challah, and if it went from there to here, Rabbi Eliezer obligates, but Rabbi Akiva exempts. Okay.
Okay. Afar chutz la'aretz. So, sheba besfina la'aretz. So here is, I guess, kind of a hypothetical situation,
Right.
where you have a boat that has a piece of it that's filled with earth, and there are crops growing in the boat. Right, you've
Okay.
got a farmer who's farming things in the boat, and now he sails over to Eretz Yisrael, and now his boat moors at on the coast of Eretz Yisrael. Chayav Masros to B'Shvius. So that's produce now is chayav in Trumas Masros, and it's chayav for Shemitah as well. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Emasai. So this statement appears many times in the Mishnah when it says Amar Amar Rabbi Yehuda Emasai. He's not disagreeing with the Tanna Kama, he's clarifying the Tanna Kama. Okay, so that's it's particularly Rabbi Yehuda. He has a penchant for doing this thing of saying of qualifying the statement of the Tanna Kama. Um, e- uh, Emasai Bisman Shasfina Gosheshes. This is when the boat is actually in contact with the ground, where it's like run aground onto the
Oh,
onto the land. So basically you've got beach, wooden boat, earth on top of it, and things growing out of there. So
I don't want to say it touches the ground that it meant that it
yeah, so
was
basically
falling.
what we're saying is that it's kind of in some way it is drawing nourishment from the land, and
Mhm.
therefore it is um, therefore it's treated as produce of the land. Isa shinilosh b'meiperos. What happens? I don't know why this is in the same Mishnah, but it is because it's a complete context switch. If you've got a dough that was kneaded with fruit juice instead of with water. Okay, so what do you know with fruit juice instead of water? Because it's not one of your seven liquids that contracts tumor. Um, and says the Tana over here, it's chayav and challah. So even though it's kneaded with fruit juice instead of water, we still treat it as bread, and you have to take challah off it. Uh,
Mhm.
that actually is not the halacha. Kahadi points out that the halacha is not according to this Mishnah. This is a minority opinion. Um, this is according to Rabbi Elazar ben Yehuda, Ish Bartosa, and he holds that even Meiperos. So we see this in Maseches Tevulyom, which will actually be coming up. No, it's still a while to go in Seder Taras, but in Tvillium we see that Mayperos is not. He's the lone opinion who says that challah that's needed or fruit juice is chayav in challah. Um, However, this is a consensus point over here, is that it is eaten with you can eat it without washing your hands, because it cannot become tame,
Right. Okay.
assuming it never became wet from any other liquid. So your
Okay.
flour that never became wet is was kneaded with fruit juice, which isn't machshiret, and therefore it
The
is.
whole, the whole Mishnah is a real Kiddush then. So the whole Mishnah is a real Kiddush.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah,
you
I
wouldn't
don't
think,
know what the Reisha and the Seif have got to do with each other, but
right?
for some reason the Tana decided to put them both in the same Mishnah. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Ha'isha yosheves v'kotza chalasa aruma. Okay. Theoretically, not necessarily recommended practice, but it says that technically a woman could separate challah naked. Why? Because when she says a bracha, she can simply cross her legs to cover her erva. Okay, and but a man cannot just cross his legs to cover his erva, and therefore he cannot say bracha. I don't know why. Again, this is in challah. I mean, it deals with the subject of challah, but really, this is a halacha in brachas. So it's an it and it didn't and it isn't specifically about challah. It's about anything that you're going to do that requires a bracha. Um, so it's curious why they decided to mention this in Maseches Challah. But anyway, mi she'enu yachol lasos isasa b'tara. Okay, so now comes your dilemma. You want to make some dough, and but you know that you're tame, and if you're going to knead it and separate challah, the challah is going to be tame,
Hmm. Right.
and you're just going to have to burn it, which is, of course, our situation nowadays. Okay, so now we see a machlokes in the Mishnah. The Tanakama says, "What's your eitzah?" Yeah, say a kabin. Make them a kabin size. Just make all of your loaves one kabin size, and therefore not 5/4 of a cup, because 5/4 is your minimum share for requiring challah. So just do it in small batches, and don't become chayav in challah, because that's just going to result in a waste of bread. V'al yasena b'tumah. Rabbi Akiva Omer yasena b'tumah v'al yasena b'kabim. He says no, make it in a large batch, so at least you'll have the mitzvah of taking challah. How so? Kashem shehu korei l'torah kachu korei l'tmeya. He can do the mitzvah. He can separate with a bracha and do the mitzvah completely with um you know with everything even though he's tame. And okay, so no, he'll have to burn it. Not the worst thing in the world, but at least he'll have a shame in the mitzvah. Lezok korei challah b'shem, velezok korei challah b'shem. Aval kabim ein lahem chelik b'shem. But if you make it in small batches, then you're never going to have a chelik in the mitzvah. So that's Rabbi Akiva's advice. Interestingly, Kahati paskins halacha like Rabbi Akiva, but the fact is that nowadays, I mean, if people are making, we know that we don't do this.
Right.
Nowadays, everyone is tame, and if we made sure to bake our batches always in small batches, A, it would be inconvenient, and B, we would forget about the mitzvah of challah.
Put together, right? Right.
Okay. Mishnah Dalet. Ha'ose isaso kabim. Okay. So now here is somebody who follows Rabbi Akiva's advice. Sorry, follows the Tanakama's advice and makes his dough in batches of a kav each. So he's not chayiv in challah in any one of them. But nagu b'zeh. And now while he's baking them in the oven, they grow and they touch each other. Okay, but they still remain patur from challah unless they actually bite into each other, so that when you pull them apart, they actually break apart. As touching is not a big deal. When they bite into each other, that means now that you've actually got one batch over there, and now when they come out the oven, you're going to have to take challah from the
Right.
batch.
Right.
Okay. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, af harode v'nosin lasal. Even if you take the bread out the oven and it wasn't even baked in one batch. But he puts these two loaves of bread together in a basket. Hatzal mitzarfan lechallah. That now makes them together chayiv in challah. because the basket has now joined them into one batch, and Gahati says okay, and this is the halacha. And I have heard people who are choshesh for that. Particularly, I've heard people saying like if you're going around with ishloach manos or something, and you collect all of like people are bringing you little hamantaschens and whatever, which were baked with dough. And I'm not sure about hamantaschen because they're I don't know if you how what the recipe is or how long it would take, how many of them you would have to take to be chayav in amotzi, but the or if people bring you little loaves of little bread rolls or whatever, they were made out of small batches, and you put them all into a big basket where all of your
Right?
food being kept, and maybe you might become chayiv and challah if it's enough of a batch.
Just
So
confused about one thing. I thought when women make, I've never made bread, so when women make challah, that the challah, they take the challah before they bake it,
that's lechatchila. Absolutely, you should take the challah from the dough once the dough has been rolled. As soon as the dough has been rolled, and we're going to see mishnayos to that effect. As soon as the dough has been rolled and it's now dough,
right?
that's the moment that it becomes chayiv and challah. Okay, but if you forgot to take challah, you can still take it when it's bread.
When it's bread. Okay. All right. That was confusing me. So I just, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Maisa Sheni. Okay. We have hay base. Karen Mavai was brought up to Yerushalayim from the distance of a day's journey in any direction. And which were its limits? Alat in the south, Akrevat in the north, Lod in the west, and the Yarden in the east. When the produce became plentiful, they decreed that it should be redeemed near the wall. And it was stipulated that whenever they wished, the procedure would be restored to its former state. Rabbi Yossi says this condition was made after the destruction of the temple, and the condition that was that once the temple was rebuilt, the procedure would be restored to its former state. Just for a second to the verse, digress. When you make, if someone makes a batch of cookies, or someone makes using dough, or muffins, or a cake or something, you need to take challah from that also then, or is it a different kind of dough? I don't. It's not bread dough, I guess.
So, look, if it's going to be baked, and it's got to be of a sufficient quantity. Remember,
Right,
when people make bread, they make quantities of bread.
right.
It's unlikely that you'd do that in one cake.
Uh, okay, all right. So it's not every time you're making something like that. If you're making a batch of
And
24
and
cookies,
I think batter and dough are not the same thing. Um, I mean, we spoke about sufganin if it's made for frying. I mean, cake is baked, but I don't know if I just don't see that batter is going to become chayav in challah ever. I mean, however big a batch of cake you're making, I don't think it's going to become chayiv in challah. But I'm not sure. I don't remember. I may be wrong on this point. So
batter is different. I don't know anything about cooking stuff, so I don't know. Okay, all right.
okay.
Hey, Gimel. Kabbalah Revai, Beis Shammai says it is not liable to the fifth or to beer, but what Beis Himmel says it is. Beis Shammai says it is liable to parrot and is liable to oleot, and the poor redeem for themselves, but Beis Hillel says all goes to the winepress. How do they redeem that they revive? He places the basket before them, before three, and says, how much does a person want to redeem for himself for a seller with the provision that the expenses be borne by his household? And he puts down the money and says, anything gathered from this is redeemed with this money, and so many baskets for a seller. Okay.
Vamos.
Okay. Dalid. The stalks of figs, dried figs, kilsum, and carob of truma are forbidden to non-priests. Kernels of truma, so as long as he keeps them, they are forbidden. But if he threw them away, they are permitted. So too bones of holy food, so long as he keeps them, they are forbidden. But if he threw them away, they're permitted. Coarse bran is permitted. Fine bran of new is forbidden, but of old is permitted. And he may treat truma as he treats chulin. And if one sips 1 or 2 cobs of fine flour from a saw, he may not throw away the rest, and must put it in a hidden basket, place. And if one cleaned out truma wheat from a storeroom, he is not enjoined to sit down and collect them one by one, but he sweeps in his usual manner and puts chulin into it. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Demai.
Bye. If one sold produce in Syria and said, this they are from Eretz Israel, he must tithe it. If they are tithe, he's believed because the mouth of that forbade the mouth is the mouth that permitted. They are from not mine, he must tithe. They are tithe, he may be relieved, because the mouth that forbade is the mouth that permitted, and if it was known that he possessed a field in Syria, he must tithe. If an Amor said to a Chaver, buy for me a bundle of vegetables, buy for me a loaf, he buys it without specifying and is exempt. But if he said, this is for me and that is for my fellow, and they became mixed up, he must tithe, even if they are 100. One invites his friend to eat with him, and he does not trust him in regard to tithes. He declares before Shabbos, what shall I separate tomorrow shall be Maestros, and adjoining it is the rest of Meiser. That which I rendered Meiser is redeemed Truma, Meiser is for it, and Meiser Sheni lies in the north or the south of it, and is redeemed with money. Okay, and the Gayim. Okay, Yulav Gimel. Colored leather and garments do not become tamei with Nagayim. How houses, regardless of their color, become tamei with Nagayim, and these are the words of Rav Meir. Rav Yehuda says leather is like houses. Rav Shimon says these colored naturally by heaven become tamei. Those dyed by man do not become tamei. A garment whose warp is colored and his weft is white, or his weft is colored and his warp is white, is always judged according to the appearance. Garments become tummy when green is to the greens or when red is to the reds, and it was deep green and spread deep red, or the deep red and spread deep green, it is tummy. If he changed and expanded it, or changed did not expand it, as if he did not change. And when Yehuda says it should be examined anew. That which is the same at the end of the first week is washed and combined. That which is the same at the second week is burnt. That which expands at the end of either week is burned. If it turned dull during the initial inspection, Rabbi Yishmael says it is washed, then confined. The comments say he does not proceed. He does not need to. If he turned dull after the first week, he is washed and confined. And if he turned dull after the second week, he tears out and burns what he tore. And it requires a patch. And Rabbi Nechemah says it does not require a patch. Yeah. Almost. Okay. Hey, Yudala. There are four types of natures. One who is easy to anger, one and easy to appease. His reward is offset by his loss. One who is difficult to anger and difficult to appease. His loss is offset by his reward. One who is difficult to anger and easy to appease is a pious person, and one who is easy to anger and difficult to appease is a wicked person. There are four types of students. One who is quick to grasp and quick to lose, his reward is offset by his loss. One who is slow to grasp and slow to lose, his loss is offset by his reward. One who is quick to grasp and slow to lose is a wise person. And one who is slow to grasp and quick to lose, this is a bad lot. Yeah, there are four types of charitable donors. One who desires that he will give, but others should not give, look disparagingly at the money of others. One who desires that others should give, but will not give if he is stingy with his own money. One who desires that he will give and others should give is a pious person. And one who desires that he will not give and others should not give is a wicked person. Let me see, hang on, not Tezine Dalit. If a man fell into water, whether all its shores are in sight or not, his wife is prohibited. Rameya says there was once an incident where someone fell in a large well and surfaced after 3 days. And Yoshi said there was once an incident where a blind man descended into a cave to immerse himself and was followed by his guide, and they remained undetected long enough for them to have died, and the rabbis permitted their wives to remarry. There was another incident at Asya where someone who was lowered into the sea and they recovered nothing but his leg. The sages said that if the leg was severed above the knee, he may remarry, but if the leg was below the knee, he may not remarry.
Yeah, this
Even
is
if he,
kind of
I know, I don't get that.
thinking
I was
about
thinking,
that horrible massacre that just happened yesterday with the sharks.
yeah, that was they found the leg or something like that.
Awful, awful. Yeah.
Even if he heard women saying so and so died is deficient. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if he heard children saying, we are going to utilize and bury so and so, his testimony is valid whether he intends to testify or not. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says a Jew's testimony is valid even if he intended to testify, but if a non-Jew intended to testify, his testimony is not valid. Witnesses may testify even if they saw by lamplight or moonlight, and we permit remarriage on the basis of a voice. There was once an incident where someone stood on a hilltop and said, "So and so, the son of so and so from such and such a place, has died." They went to the hilltop but found no one there, yet they permitted his wife to remarry. There was another incident. Zalman was so and said, "I am so and so, the son of so and so. A snake has bitten me and I am dying." They went there, but they could not recognize him, yet they permitted his wife to remarry. Okay.
Okay, and that's it.
We're starting something new tomorrow, or we're continuing
So for which are we finishing Yavamas?
Amos
Yeah, looks like we're finishing Yavamas, then Kasubos is next.
Which is next. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Enjoy.
Uh,
And I'll